Hi, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome to this first little podcast YouTube video. If you're joining in with me on YouTube, I apologize for the very artistically deprived background that we have going on here. I'm currently staying with my sister in Nebraska, and I'm filming in her basement. And this is actually the only place with decent lighting that I could, that doesn't have like a bunch of outlet on the walls. So once I'm back home, hopefully we will have a whole different setup going on. But for today, this is what we're working with. And I'm going to be peeking at my notes a lot on my laptop. That is right over here because this is the first podcast I've ever filmed. I also don't really know how I feel about the look of me with headphones on. And I'm also going to try to stay a consistent distance from the microphone the whole time. So this might be a little bit rough just because this is the first podcast I've ever recorded or filmed, but we're gonna just jump right in. So welcome to the first episode of the Reasons We Believe podcast. And we really are just gonna jump right in because I'm not about long intros. I don't know who is, but I do just want to very briefly preface why I'm making this podcast in the first place. And then we'll get right into the content. So essentially, I am very unsettled by the current relativistic culture that you and I currently find ourselves living in. And what I mean by relativistic is that it's becoming more and more common for people to adopt the slogan, and I'm sure that many of you have heard people say this, or maybe you even said it yourself, but it's becoming common for people to adopt slogans like, live your truth, just do you. Truth is relative. What's true for you is different than what's true for me. And the reason why this is a dangerous mindset and why it is unsettling to me is because it justifies the immoral, and quite frankly, it's in direct opposition to reality. People who adopt this frame of mind, I believe, are living a lie because truth is not relative. What's true for you is either wrong or it's right. Truth is not simply what you make it. And I want to bring light to the truth and call people out of darkness because you deserve to know what is true about the world. You deserve to know how you got here, what your purpose is, and where you're going. And those sorts of questions, what's my purpose? How did I get here? Where am I going? Those are some of life's biggest, deepest, and most important questions. I think that these type of questions start invading our mind, if you will, when the world starts to get a little bit crazy. And I think you and I can both agree that is very much the state of our world right now, let alone just our country in general. It's utter chaos. With the election coming up, people questioning, are we on the brink of World War III? The cost of living is insane, wondering, can we trust the government? It's just really hard to be at peace with everything. Our world, let alone our country, is so divided. And it's very unsettling, and we end up wondering why things are the way that they are. And so I want to share with you what I believe about the world. I have been really, really blessed to grow up in a home where knowing the truth was prioritized. I grew up knowing that I have a purpose and value. I have a sense of hope that keeps me going every single day. It keeps me peaceful in a world of shifting sands. I'm able to look at, what's going on with the election, what's going on with our current president and affairs in our country. And I'm able to look at that and I'm able to see okay, this is concerning, but I'm not totally consumed by it. And it's because of what I believe, just my basic beliefs about the world. So I firmly believe, based on what I objectively know to be true about the world. So based on what I know to be true about the world, morally, logically, scientifically, historically, I firmly believe that there is a God. And not only that, but I believe that he wants a personal relationship with you. And I know that when I say things like God or any sort of religious verbiage, which I really am going to just not bring into these episodes because I don't think that they're always helpful. But I realize that when I use words like that, some people have a mental guard up. And I want you to know that I understand that because unfortunately God has been portrayed as unscientific, unnecessary, sometimes hateful, homophobic, or even worse in culture. But if you stick with me here, I think you'll find that that is not the God that I believe in. But I believe in a God that loves you and wants a relationship with you. And that is a belief that has saved my entire life and completely transformed me. And it's not something I blindly believe. It's something I know why I believe. So the heart of this episode and every episode from here on out is to back up those claims that there is a God and he wants a personal relationship with you, and that can transform your whole life. So that's my little preface. Thank you for tuning in. Whether you are a fellow like-minded theist like myself, or you're an atheist, or somewhere in between, I'm just so glad you're here, wanting to grow in knowledge and pursuit of the truth. Thank you for participating in that pursuit, no matter what your perspective on life is, or what your worldview is, which is a word I'm going to be throwing in a lot in these episodes. Just know that I respect you, and I'm not trying to convert you or bring you into my religion just for clarity's sake. I am Christian, but my goal is never going to be to convince you to convert to Christianity. I just want to have, participate in this dialogue and discussion of truth with you, and I look forward to doing that. Okay, let's jump right in. So I'm betting a lot of the listeners of this podcast are from my Instagram, either my personal Instagram or me and my dad's Instagram account, Reasons We Believe, our apologetic Instagram. Go give that a follow if you want to stay up to date with other content like this. And on my Instagram, I made a couple of very bold claims. So 3. Number 1, if you reject the idea of God or a creator on the basis of miracles, you actually believe in more miracles than I do. Number 2, theism, which is just the belief in God, not any specific God, just in general, the belief in God. Theism best explains reality. Number 3, theism has the answers to life's biggest questions. So for this first episode, we're just going to touch on that first point, the idea that if you reject God on the basis of miracles, you actually believe in more miracles than I do. All right, so I'm a huge fan of defining our terms. I think that it just paves the way for a clear conversation. So first of all, what do I mean by miracles? So I mean this is a definition from Oxford Language, so I'm just going to read it real quick. A highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. So my little, in a nutshell, definition of a miracle is something that defies the laws of nature, something that you wouldn't expect to happen based on what you normally observe about reality. Now, when it comes to God, many people look at that belief and it seems highly improbable, stealing that little word from the definition there, that a supernatural divine being who we cannot see, touch, feel, hear, taste, etc. exists somewhere out there beyond the space-time continuum. But he's simultaneously within and outside of reality. And it's just too crazy of a belief to adopt for some people. Why would you believe in something that you cannot physically touch or observe? Or measure within the natural world? It seems too crazy, and it seems like blind faith. The unfortunate thing is, logical arguments for God are somewhat very rare to find in our current culture. Believing in God does require believing in miracles, and it certainly does require faith, but it's not blind faith. I'd actually go as far to argue that atheists have more faith than I do. As apologist Frank Turek puts it, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. So why do I say that? Well, atheists believe that the natural world and everything within it, including you, me, and every living organism, the world itself, every other complex and simple creature, are here on accident. We were not planned. We are put here on accident based on chance. And those are ideas that, friends, I cannot adhere to them. I believe that this world, you and me, and everything else in it are too complex and full of order to logically conclude that we are all accidents based on chance, that we're just here for no reason, that nobody put us here on purpose. So what I'm going to do now is put forward some scientific truths to explain why I believe atheism requires believing in miracles and why I don't have enough reason or faith to believe in those miracles. Basically, I'll be explaining that if you reject God on the basis of miracles, you believe in more miracles than I do. All right, let's jump in. Most atheists believe that we, our universe, and everything within it are the product of random, chaotic, unguided events. Billions of years ago, the universe expanded from a small ball of heat into the complex, wonderful, beautiful, and finely tuned for life world we see today. This is an idea more commonly known as the Big Bang, which I suggest actually looking into what the definition of that is if you want to learn more, especially if you're a theist, because the Big Bang is something I am totally fine believing in. So, This is widely accepted among both atheistic and theistic scientists. And as famous atheistic scientist Stephen Hawking puts it, if the rate... Okay, hang with me here. This is a big quote, but I'm going to explain it and unpack it. It's going to make total sense. If the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, it would have recollapsed before it reached its present size. If it had been greater by part in a million, the universe would have expanded too rapidly for stars and planets to form. Put simply, this means that the rate of expansion of the universe, so the rate that it came into existence, was literally perfect to allow it to completely form. If it had been different by even the smallest amount, you and I wouldn't be here today. The universe, it simply would cease to exist. So the universe came into existence at the perfect rate. First scientific truth. We're going to keep that in mind. But that's the universe as a whole, okay? Let's get even more specific by talking about our home, planet Earth. As it turns out, planet Earth is perfectly situated to allow for complex life. The Center for Astrophysics states that any planet's orbit has to lie in the habitable zone, where the planet's surface is just the right temperature for liquid water to exist. Every form of life we know requires liquid water, so any planet too close or too far from its host star, which is the sun in our case, is less likely to contain life. So we are, as a planet, perfectly positioned near the sun. We're not too close and we're not too far. But other planets don't have it this good. NASA says that the habitable zone around our sun stretches roughly from the orbit of Venus to the orbit of Mars. Venus is generally believed to be too hot to support life. Earth, it appears, is just right. So we just looked at how the universe came into existence, that the rate of expansion was perfect, and now it seems that our beautiful planet Earth is perfectly positioned where it is in the solar system to allow for complex life to form. Those other planets that, like Venus and Jupiter, they don't have it that good. Life doesn't exist there as we know it, at least not complex life like ourselves doesn't exist there because it's not habitable enough on those planets. But those other planets play a huge role in why we are allowed to live on planet Earth. NASA says this about Jupiter. In our own solar system, Jupiter plays an important protective role by deflecting comets and asteroids that might have otherwise hit Earth. Jupiter has helped to create a more stable environment for life. If not for Jupiter, it's possible that advanced life may have never gained a foothold. Whoa. When I read that about Jupiter, I was actually shocked because, what? If Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Thank you, Jupiter. Holy cow. So that's our Earth. That's the universe. What about you and me? Our bodies are amazing. We are made up of some of the most complex form of information on the planet, and it's called DNA. Put our biology hats on. We're going back to 8th grade science, or whenever it is that we learned about DNA. For more information on this topic, I highly recommend checking out a short video by the Discovery Science called The Information Enigma. But in a nutshell, we're just going to dive into it here. DNA tells our bodies how to develop and continue to function. According to the National Human Genome Research Institute, DNA contains the instructions needed for an organism to develop, survive, and reproduce. So DNA is information, but it's not just any information. It's sensible, it's coherent, it's logical information responsible for all of life. And what do we know about information? Any form of information ever. A book, a movie, an instruction manual. It always comes from a mind. If you were to see the sentence, "John loves Sarah," written in the sand, would you look at that and say, oh, the waves came up and they made this imprint on the sand that looks like a sentence, "John loves Sarah"? You could say that, but wouldn't it be more logical to conclude that somebody with a mind drew that in the sand? DNA is just as complex, if not significantly more so, than a sentence in the sand. You would never look at that sentence and be like, oh, the waves drew that. No, the waves don't have a mind. DNA is an example in which our bodies are finely tuned for life and reflect design. Now, you can say that this grand universe and our very own complex bodies, which are both full of order and design, came here from an unplanned, chaotic chain of events. You can hold to the belief that we are here by mere chance and there's nothing guiding our universe. But remember, order doesn't come from chaos. Information doesn't come unless there's a mind behind it. Things that have a beginning do not begin to exist without a cause. That's not the way the universe naturally and logically functions. You can say there's no God, but then you are believing in something highly improbable. And I can draw that conclusion that atheists believe in highly improbable events. I can draw that conclusion by observing the way the universe naturally operates. Rejecting God, you might say then, is a bit of a miracle. Believing all this is here on its own, due to chance, is a miracle. Now, you still might not accept the idea of God, and that's okay. My goal here is not to convince you that there is a God, but rather to bridge the gap between you and me in terms of miracles. You can say that my belief in God is a miracle, but you also must admit that yours is a belief in miracles too. Although I would go as far to say that my belief in God isn't simply a miracle, it's actually the best explanation of reality. And if you'd like to know why I believe that, check out the next episode where I dive into the bold claim number 2. Number 2 is the belief in God or theism best explains reality. But if you are somebody who does reject the idea of God on the basis of miracles, I just want you to take a second and really focus on all of the unique features of our universe and how our universe is so finely tuned, and it came into existence at just the right rate to sort of not convince you but be convincing that our universe is lined up so perfectly for life. And I talked about things like DNA, I talked about fine-tuning, and those are all ideas that I'm going to end up doing full-length episodes on in the future. So if you have a ton of questions, you're like, wait, Natalie, you didn't touch on this, you didn't answer this, I have a refutation for what I said here. That's okay. This is simply just a video to bridge the gap between you and I, to open up doors for further conversation. I just sort of want you to sort of sit in the idea that, hey, believing in God, yeah, it requires a belief in miracles, but if you're an atheist and you reject God, your worldview also requires a belief in miracles. You believe that all this is here based on chance, when order never comes from chaos. And that's exactly what atheists believe. And I'm not trying to water down anyone's worldview. So if you feel like I misrepresented you, anything like that, go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I will address that, try my best to address that in the next video. But just remember, this is a respectful dialogue of truth and a discussion of reality, trying to arrive at the best explanation for why we're here, who put us here, and where we're going. So that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to Reasons We Believe, and I'll see you next time.